What I'm about to share is Judge Frank Caprio's most heartwarming case that brought tears to every person in that courtroom and reminded us what true goodness looks like. A 78-year-old widow named Dorothy Williams walks into court for allegedly stealing baby formula. But when Judge Caprio discovers the beautiful secret she's been keeping for 15 years, he makes a decision so touching that it restores your faith in humanity forever. I promise you what Dorothy has been doing quietly in her community will warm your heart and remind you of the kind of neighbors we all hope to have. When Judge Caprio learns about her 15 years of selfless service, he responds with such grace and wisdom that it becomes a moment you'll never forget. This isn't just a courtroom case. This is a reminder that angels walk among us, often in the form of gentle grandmothers who ask for nothing but give everything. What happens in the next 30 minutes will show you what real community spirit looks like. It's a peaceful Wednesday morning in September at Providence Municipal Court. And Judge Frank Caprio is reviewing his morning cases when he notices something that immediately touches his heart. Dorothy Williams, 78 years old, charged with shoplifting baby formula from local pharmacies over the past 2 months. The courtroom has its familiar atmosphere, and the staff deeply respect Judge Caprio's compassionate approach to justice. At exactly 10:30 a.m., the bailiff gently escorts Dorothy into the courtroom, and everyone immediately notices something special about this defendant. Dorothy carries herself with the grace of a woman who has lived through decades of both joy and sorrow, her white hair styled in a neat bun, wearing a modest navy dress with small pearls, the kind of outfit that speaks of dignity and respect. But what really draws attention is the worn canvas tote bag she carries carefully in both hands, holding it as if it contains something precious beyond measure. Dorothy is here because over the past 8 weeks she's been caught taking baby formula from 3 different pharmacies in her neighborhood. Not candy, not medicine for herself, but baby formula. And each time she was apprehended calmly, making no attempt to flee or make excuses. Here's what puzzles everyone. Dorothy Williams has been widowed for 22 years, lives alone in a small apartment, and according to her neighbors rarely has visitors, certainly no young families with infants. Have you ever had a neighbor like Dorothy? Someone who lived quietly, kept to themselves, but somehow you just knew they were special. As Dorothy approaches the bench, Judge Caprio immediately senses something different about this case. Despite facing multiple theft charges, Dorothy shows no anxiety or shame. Instead, there's a peaceful determination in her eyes, as if she's protecting something far more important than her own welfare. Dorothy Elizabeth Williams, the court clerk announces. Dorothy steps forward, still holding her canvas bag with both hands, her posture straight, with the dignity of someone who has never lost her sense of propriety. Judge Caprio looks up from his paperwork with those kind eyes that have shown mercy to thousands. But something about Dorothy's serene composure tells him this is no ordinary case. Mrs. Williams, you're facing multiple counts of shoplifting, specifically baby formula from 3 pharmacies in your neighborhood over the past 8 weeks. The total value is approximately $160. How do you plead? Guilty, Your Honor, Dorothy says softly but clearly, her voice carrying the gentleness of someone who has spent a lifetime caring for others. I took the formula they mentioned. Judge Caprio sets down his pen, the familiar gesture that signals he's about to look beyond the legal formalities to understand the human story. Mrs. Williams, may I ask why baby formula? The reports indicate you took nothing else, just formula from 3 different locations over 2 months. Dorothy's hands tighten slightly around her canvas bag, and for the first time, her calm demeanor shows a hint of emotion. Your Honor, I needed that formula. There are babies who depend on it. Judge Caprio's expression softens with interest. Babies who depend on it? Mrs. Williams, do you care for infants? In a way, Your Honor, yes, but it's hard to explain without people thinking poorly of me. The courtroom settles into attentive silence. Mrs. Williams, can you tell me about your family situation? Do you live with relatives? No, Your Honor. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on Federal Hill. My dear husband Henry passed 22 years ago, and we never had children of our own. I see. And you mentioned babies who depend on you. Dorothy's eyes fill with a mixture of love and worry. Your Honor, they're not my babies, but in my heart they might as well be. The courtroom leans in, sensing something extraordinary in this gentle woman's words. Dorothy looks around the courtroom at the people watching with growing affection and curiosity. Her hands shake slightly as she continues holding her precious canvas bag. Your Honor, people might think what I do is foolish, but I've never been able to turn away from a child in need. Dorothy, I've been privileged to serve this community for 30 years. I promise you I would never think kindness is foolish. Please share what's in your heart. Dorothy takes a deep breath, her voice growing stronger with purpose. Your Honor, for the past 15 years, I've been caring for babies whose mothers are struggling with addiction and can't provide proper care. The courtroom stirs with surprise and growing admiration. Caring for babies? Yes, Your Honor. It started the winter after my husband passed. I was so lonely. I heard crying through the thin walls. My neighbor was a young woman struggling with addiction, and her 6-month-old baby was crying for hours. I started watching Timothy during the day, feeding him, making sure he was safe. Judge Caprio moves closer, his expression shifting to deep respect. Dorothy, how many babies have you cared for over 15 years? Your Honor, I've kept a record in this bag. Dorothy finally opens her canvas bag and carefully pulls out a handwritten journal with a faded flower cover. 53 babies, some for a few weeks, some for months, some on and off for years. The courtroom becomes completely silent as Judge Caprio accepts the journal and begins reading Dorothy's careful, loving documentation. Dorothy, this is beautiful. Yes, Your Honor. Every precious child who came into my care. I documented their feeding schedules, their doctor visits, their first smiles, their first steps. Dorothy continues, Your Honor, the reason I was taking baby formula is because my Social Security barely covers my rent and utilities. I've used up all my savings over the years buying formula, diapers, baby food. But 8 weeks ago, 3 new babies came into my care all at once, and I simply ran out of money. Judge Caprio continues reading Dorothy's journal. Dorothy, it says here that you've helped mothers get into treatment programs, helped them find jobs, even helped some complete their education. Yes, Your Honor. I believe that healing the mother helps the baby. Dorothy reaches back into her bag and carefully pulls out dozens of photographs, letters, and children's drawings. These are my babies, Your Honor. Well, they're not really mine, but I've loved them as if they were. Timothy, my first, is now 18 and starting college. Little James learned to walk in my living room. As Dorothy shows photograph after photograph of healthy, happy children, the courtroom realizes they're witnessing something sacred. Your Honor, I know taking formula without paying is wrong. But when a baby is hungry and crying, you do whatever it takes. These children deserved someone who believed they mattered. Judge Caprio continues examining the photographs and letters. Dorothy, how did you manage financially supporting all these babies? I cashed in my husband's life insurance policy years ago, Your Honor. Sold our wedding china, his tools, everything we treasured. But seeing these babies healthy and loved was worth more than any possession. And your community, did anyone help you with this mission? A few neighbors understood and would bring baby clothes or offer to babysit, but mostly I kept it quiet to protect the mother's privacy and the baby's dignity. Dorothy pulls out a thick section of her journal filled with pressed flowers and tiny handprints. These are keepsakes, Your Honor. A pressed flower from the day Timothy took his first steps. Handprints from when Isabella was learning to paint. Judge Caprio examines these precious mementos. Dorothy, this letter is from Mrs. Rodriguez thanking you for... Wait, she says you helped her complete her GED while you cared for Samuel. Education breaks the cycle, Your Honor. I tutored several mothers in my living room while their babies napped. And this letter is from the Riverside Community Center thanking you for your volunteer work with their parenting classes. Yes, Your Honor. I've been teaching new mothers how to care for their babies for 10 years now. Judge Caprio realizes that Dorothy hasn't just been caring for individual babies. She's been healing families and strengthening her entire community. But the most beautiful revelation comes when Dorothy opens a final section of her bag. Your Honor, I want to show you something special. These are my graduation pictures. She pulls out dozens of photographs of young people in caps and gowns, wedding photos, and family portraits. Every child I cared for who has graduated from high school, gotten married, or had babies of their own. Some of these young mothers now bring their own babies to visit me. The cycle of love continues. Friends, I hope you understand what you're witnessing here. Dorothy Williams has spent 15 years being a guardian angel to babies and mothers when they needed it most. What Judge Caprio does next becomes one of the most beautiful moments in courtroom history. He removes his judicial robe, walks over to Dorothy, and takes her hands in his and speaks to her with the respect reserved for someone truly holy. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Caprio announces, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom with reverent warmth. You are in the presence of an angel. Dorothy Williams has spent 15 years giving everything she had to protect and nurture children when no one else would. Judge Caprio returns to his bench, but remains standing as he addresses the court. Not only am I immediately dismissing these charges, but I'm declaring that Dorothy Williams represents the very best of what it means to serve others. This court officially recognizes her as a community treasure whose selfless dedication has saved lives and healed families. The entire courtroom erupts in applause. Furthermore, I'm personally ensuring that Dorothy never has to choose between her own needs and caring for these precious children. This community will rally around this remarkable woman to support her continued mission of love. Judge Caprio then picks up his phone and makes a call right there in open court, initiating the process for Dorothy to receive the state's highest civilian honor. Within an hour, representatives from the Department of Children, Youth and Families, local churches and community organizations are in Judge Caprio's courtroom. Dorothy, I want you to know something. You will never worry about formula, diapers, or baby supplies again. This community is going to make sure you have everything you need to continue being the angel you've always been. The judge's voice grows stronger with emotion. This is what justice truly means. Recognizing goodness when we see it, supporting those who serve others, and making sure that love wins over loneliness, that hope triumphs over despair. What happened after Dorothy's court appearance created a wave of community support and love that touched hearts across the country. The Rhode Island Community Foundation established the Dorothy Williams Angel Fund to support individuals providing informal child care to families in crisis. Over $1 million was raised in the first week. But the most heartwarming response came from Dorothy's babies and their mothers. Within days, over 30 of them had organized a surprise celebration for Dorothy, bringing their children, now healthy teenagers and young adults, to thank the woman who had given them hope. Samuel Rodriguez, now preparing for military deployment, came home to thank Dorothy personally. "Mrs. Dorothy, you didn't just take care of me when Mom couldn't," he said with tears in his eyes. "You showed me what it means to love without conditions." The Federal Hill Community Center dedicated their new child care wing in Dorothy's honor. Local churches and community organizations created a formal support network around Dorothy's ministry, providing her with a larger apartment suitable for child care, a steady supply of baby necessities and a team of volunteers. But Dorothy's response to all the attention remained true to her humble character. "I never did this for recognition. I did it because every baby deserves to feel loved and every mother deserves a chance to heal." 1 year later, Dorothy's informal child care network had grown to include 12 grandmothers across Providence, all following her model of loving support. Judge Frank Caprio later said that Dorothy's case reminded him why he had dedicated his life to service. Dorothy Williams didn't just care for babies, Judge Caprio reflected. She preserved families, strengthened our community, and showed us what it means to love your neighbor as yourself. 2 years after her court appearance, Judge Caprio visited Dorothy's apartment on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. He found her in her rocking chair, gently feeding a 3-month-old baby while helping a teenage mother with her homework. "Still changing the world one baby at a time," Judge Caprio observed with a smile. Dorothy looked up with her gentle smile. "Every child is precious, Your Honor. Every child deserves someone who believes in them." And friends, I want to leave you with Dorothy's beautiful example. Who are the quiet servants, the gentle souls making a difference without asking for recognition? Dorothy Williams spent 15 years proving that one person with a loving heart can change dozens of lives. Judge Frank Caprio showed us that recognizing goodness and supporting it makes our whole community stronger.